You're watching Reality Check. The exit polls in Uttar Pradesh, which predict a comfortable win for the BJP, some even suggesting a massive sweep, only seeks to underscore what those of us reporting elections in the Modi era find on our travels, that we're entering a new phase, it would appear, in Indian politics, where popular discontent does not equate to electoral choices, where seemingly governance has been delinked from voting preferences. Now, this is not to say that we didn't come across BJP voters in Uttar Pradesh saying that they won't vote for the BJP this time. We did, and this is reflected in the poll of exit polls, which finds that the BJP is winning with a reduced margin, dropping to about 240 from 300 odd seats, and the SP increasing from 47 to around 140. But at least two closely watched polls, India Today and Axis. India Today Axis, and now another well-regarded polling agency, the CSDS, Lokniti, have projected a landslide, suggesting that the BJP alliance will end up with a 43% vote share, while SP Plus will get about 35%. While CSDS doesn't project seats, a 40% plus vote suggests the BJP could easily end up with 300 plus seats, like last time. Basically a wave, similar to what Axis had found. Again, this isn't to say that one didn't hear praise for the Yogi government's performance as one travelled. The most commonly cited reasons why people were happy and said that they will once again vote for the BJP was free rations, for example, distributed during the pandemic. The government's emphasis on infrastructure, especially highway projects, and the perception of a crime-free Uttar Pradesh. But at the same time, there was a perception, a counter-perception, that the government's record was far from perfect. We repeatedly heard complaints over unemployment, over the rising menace of stray cattle since the Yogi government came to power, price rise, inflation. But even if one puts aside rhetoric, if one looks at the data, UP does remain a poor performing state, especially on social indicators. In Niti Aayog's health index, UP is the lowest amongst large states. In Niti Aayog's multi-dimensional poverty index, UP is third from the bottom. And who can forget the second wave? Large number of deaths, oxygen shortage, the Allahabad High Court saying the deaths due to oxygen shortage was a criminal act, not less than a genocide. And yet, despite BJP voters we met who spoke about this, they didn't always mean that they will end up voting against the BJP. Like these farmers in Chandauli in eastern UP, in the rural parts of Kanpur as well, who were all previous BJP voters, who complained about the stray cattle menace having worsened in the past 5 years, but say they'll still vote for the BJP again.
ये जो बार बार लोग कह रहे हैं कि जानवर का प्रॉब्लम है, यहाँ पे आपके यहाँ पे भी है?
हाँ, जानवर का प्रॉब्लम है, लेकिन जिस तरह से इसको पैदा किया जा रहा है इस चुनाव के अंदर की बछड़े का प्रॉब्लम है, सांड का प्रॉब्लम है। हर गांव में अगर छोड़ा भी जाए तो 2 या 3 बछड़े आप छोड़ सकती हैं, लेकिन सबसे ज्यादा जिससे प्रॉब्लम है उस पर किसी का ध्यान नहीं है। नीलगाय परेशान करती है, हिरन परेशान करती है, जंगली सुअर परेशान करते हैं, उस पे किसी का ध्यान नहीं है। सबका ध्यान बस इस चुनाव को कम्युनल करने के लिए बछड़ा 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 मचा रखे हैं लोग।
पिछली बार किसको दिए थे?
योगी बाबा।
अच्छा, क्यों?
हम लोग योगी बाबा के भक्त हैं।
अच्छा, लेकिन जो आप कह रहे हो कि प्रॉब्लम हो रही है, खेती में नुकसान हो रही है, उससे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता?
कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा, बस ये कि मुद्दा तैयार किया जा रहा है। वैसे तो बहुत मुद्दे हैं, 5 साल में कितना व्यवस्था कर देगी सरकार।
अच्छा,
उसको समय दीजिए, हर व्यवस्था होगा, धीरे धीरे सब व्यवस्था हो जाएगा।
यहाँ पे जो जानवर का मसला बता रहे हैं, ये प्रॉब्लम है यहाँ पे?
जी हाँ।
अच्छा, क्या करते हैं
जानवर? मैडम, रात में सबसे ज्यादा परेशान करते हैं, और जो छुट्टा जानवर घूमते हैं, ये जानवर किसान अपने अपने खेतों में लेके लाठी डंडा बैठता है।
हाँ। आपने पिछली बार वोट किया था?
जी मैम।
किसको वोट दिया था?
भाजपा को।
इस बार ही सोचे है?
जी।
किसको देंगे?
भाजपा को।
तो लेकिन आप कह रहे हो कि दिक्कत हो रही है, गाय फसल खराब हो रहा है और ये सब।
मैडम, भाजपा की नीतियाँ गंदी नहीं है।
हाँ।
भाजपा की नीतियाँ बहुत अच्छी हैं, समाज कल्याण के हित के लिए हैं उनकी जितनी नीतियाँ हैं।
Or listen to these young men in Kanpur who complained about a lack of jobs, but most of them said they'll still stick with the BJP.
बीकॉम फाइनल ईयर मेरा कंप्लीट हो गया और इस समय एलएलबी की पढ़ाई कर रहा हूँ। और पढ़ाई को पूरी करने के लिए मैं पार्ट टाइम जॉब भी करता हूँ। पर क्या है कि अभी पार्ट टाइम जॉब भी नहीं मिल रही है
अच्छा, पहले करते थे?
हाँ पहले करते थे।
तो यानी कि आपका पहले रोजगार होता था लेकिन अब वो छूट गया है?
जी बिल्कुल।
कितना कमाई हो जाता था?
ये पार्ट टाइम मेरी जॉब थी, ये था कि मतलब 5-6 हज़ार रुपये मिल जाते थे महीने में अपना मतलब पढ़ाई करने के लिए।
और आपने सोचा इलेक्शन के बारे में?
जी बिल्कुल।
किसको देंगे?
जी अब बता सकते हैं।
हाँ,
योगी जी को देंगे।
अच्छा
जी।
क्यों? लेकिन आप तो कह रहे थे रोजगार का इश्यू।
नहीं तो रोजगार एक मौका एक और हम इनको देंगे रोजगार के लिए।
आपके जैसे बहुत सारे नौजवान जो है वो
बहुत
सड़क
सारे,
पे उतर
जी।
आ रहे हैं कि विरोध कर रहे हैं सरकार की रोजगार को की मांग लेकर।
जी।
हाँ।
मांग लेकर मैडम ये है कि अगर रोजगार के लिए सबसे पहले ध्यान और शिक्षा को और बेहतर कर सकते हैं
हाँ।
तो उसके लिए और अच्छी बात होगी और एक बार मौका और मिलना चाहिए इनको। बिल्कुल।
Another area of weakness for the BJP on the back of a patchy performance is believed to be the erosion of social groups that are most recent additions to the BJP camp, like Jats in the western part of UP. And while there was some discontent with Jats, with some of them saying they won't vote for the BJP this time, not all were averse to the party.
यहाँ तो अभी बीजेपी के सिटिंग है इस वक्त।
हाँ सिटिंग है क्योंकि पूरे गांव ने लगभग 80% वोट जो है बीजेपी को गया था।
कब?
पिछली बार लेकिन उसके बाद जो एक्सपेक्टेशन थी बीजेपी से वो पूरी नहीं हुई।
ये बताइए कि आप ये कह रहे हैं कि जो पहले जो बीजेपी को वोट दिया था जी इस बार इसी वजह से थोड़ी नाराजगी है।
नाराजगी चाहते हैं जी लोक दल की है,
छटूकी भी है, ये खेत खा के लोक दल की वोट है।
देखिए
और जो बीजेपी होगा सब सारा को मारेंगे।
बात नहीं करते लेकिन समस्या बताइए।
ये गाय बछड़े छुड़वाते इन्होंने हमारी सारी फसल नष्ट कर दी।
आप सब जाट मतलब ज्यादा
नहीं, हम गिरी हैं। हाँ जी, गोस्वामी
हैं।
Yes.
और कुछ जाट भाई भी हैं।
हाँ जाट है, ये सब जाट ही है। यहाँ थोड़े गिरी हैं और सब जाट है।
जाट भी है।
हाँ जी,
आप पे भी
ये
कोई
सब गिरी है, ये जाट है। आगे इधर
यहाँ पे
हाँ जी,
चुनाव को लेके क्या माहौल बन रहा है?
चुनाव के लिए यहाँ बीजेपी का माहौल है और बीजेपी का माहौल है और बीजेपी को ही लोग चाहते हैं।
अच्छा, क्या वजह
क्योंकि
है?
योगी साहब का जो राज रहा है जो 5 साल में, इससे लोग इतने प्रभावित हैं कि मैं तो शायद अपनी लास्ट जीवन की जो लास्ट वोट भी डाल लूंगा
हाँ।
तो वह भी बीजेपी को देकर जाऊंगा।
Divided views there in western UP. Or listen to people in this village in rural Banaras, where another social group that was key to the BJP's victory, non-Yadav OBCs, Kurmis in this case, yes, some of them are angry, but several are not.
यहाँ पिछली बार किसको वोट पड़े थे?
भाजपा को।
आप सब भाजपा को ही दिए थे?
अगली बार तो दिए थे लेकिन इस बार तो नहीं दे सकते हैं।
आप क्या करते हैं? आप भी यही
हम पढ़ते हैं।
अच्छा, क्या पढ़ रहे हैं?
बीए कर रहे हैं। हम ये चाह रहे हैं कि युवाओं को जो कि रोजगार मिले, ये मोदी जी नहीं दे रहे हैं। यही कमी है इनकी, विशेष तौर पर महंगाई इतनी बढ़ाई जा रही है, उसे कम नहीं कर रहे हैं। बस वो बिजली और सड़क और एलपीजी गैस यही सब दे रहे हैं। जो जिसकी महंगाई पहले तो सब्सिडी कट के मिल रहा था, लेकिन अब सब्सिडी नहीं मिल रहा है। इतनी महंगाई बढ़ जाएगी, हम लोग दब जा रहे हैं। इसके कारण हमें काफ़ी परेशानी हो रही है, दिक्कत।
किसकी सब्सिडी? गैस की?
हाँ, पहले मिला था तो अब फिर बढ़ा करके महंगाई इसको वसूल ली है। मोदी जी का यह है, हम यही चाह रहे हैं कि विशेषकर महंगाई को कम किया जाए। मोदी जी से मेरा यही आग्रह है।
आग्रह तो है लेकिन अभी तो चुनाव में आपको तय करना पड़ेगा।
हाँ, तो
आपका
मोदी जी तो
आप किसको देंगे? आप दिए थे पिछली बार वोट?
हाँ, उन्हीं को दिए थे,
बीजेपी को।
हाँ।
और इस बार
भी भाई कंफर्म नहीं है, लेकिन चर्चा में है। अखिलेश जी, देखिए कौन जीतता है।
हम लोग तो
भाजपा ही हैं। पहले भी थे, इस बार भी देंगे। क्यों? विकास के नाम पे। क्या विकास हुआ है?
अरे सड़क बना है, रोड बना है, सड़क बना है, राशन भी मिल रहा है।
राशन मिल रहा है?
सबको मिल रहा है।
क्या राशन मिला?
सब चीज मिला, नमक से लेके तेल दाल सब चीज, चना चावल गेहूँ सब चीज।
So some smaller OBC groups in the same village saying they'll vote now against the BJP, but some of them saying they are still very much with the party. How does one explain this? No easy answers. Hindutva is of course a factor. From a struggling businessman we spoke to in the industrial hub of Kanpur to a young man in rural impoverished Bundelkhand unemployed.
आप किस समाज से बिलोंग करते हैं? ओबीसी। किसको वोट देंगे आप?
जी हमारी तरफ से तो फुल सपोर्ट भाजपा ही को है।
पूरा भाजपा को है? अच्छा, क्यों?
क्योंकि हमारे लिए कुछ करें या ना करें, हमारे देश की जनता के लिए काफ़ी कुछ कर रहे हैं वो।
आपके लिए कुछ करें ना करें, कुछ कर रहे हैं
अगर देश का विकास हो रहा है तो हमारा विकास स्वाभाविक होगा।
अच्छा, देश का विकास हो रहा है
जी।
क्या विकास? जैसे कि
मान लीजिए जो चीजें नहीं थी हमारे यहाँ पर वो उपलब्ध हुई हैं। अभी तक हमारे जैसे मान लीजिए राम मंदिर का निर्माण नहीं हो रहा था, वो निर्माण हो रहा है।
तो ये हो रहा है
जी।
आपकी क्या उम्र है?
जी 18 साल हो चुकी है।
क्या कर रहे हैं आप?
हम अभी पढ़ाई कर रहे हैं सर।
और आगे क्या करना है आपको?
आगे हमको करना है यही कंप्यूटर कोर्स कर रहे हैं, शायद बैंकिंग लाइन में।
यहाँ नौकरी मिल सकती है आपको कहीं?
चांस तो नहीं है सर।
नहीं है
जी नहीं।
कहाँ जाएंगे आप?
अब तो वही तो आगे समझ में आएगा कहाँ जाएंगे कहाँ नहीं जाएंगे।
लेकिन आपके यहाँ प्रोडक्शन कितना कम हुआ होगा?
हम आधा
ये कब के कंपैरिजन?
ये पिछले 2-3 सालों में जब से कोरोना काल खासकर आया है तो लोगों की परचेजिंग कैपेसिटी कम हो गई। आदमी कहता है हमारा जो काम हम वही करेंगे, सरकार ने दाम नहीं गिराया।
लोग भी कम करने पड़े हैं आपको?
हमारे यहाँ 12-13 लोग थे तो 4-5 कम कर दिए हमने।
आप कांग्रेस को समर्थन करने वाले हैं?
उन्होंने मेरी बात को नहीं माना। अगर वो मेरे बात को मैनिफेस्टो में डालते हैं तो निश्चित तौर से मैं कांग्रेस बात करता। डाला उन्होंने भी नहीं, हाथ उनके भी काम गए। लिहाजा जब सब एक से ही है तो हम हिंदुत्व की बात करेंगे, भारतीय जनता पार्टी को वोट करेंगे।
अभी तक आपने कहा कि आपको कितनी दिक्कतें हो रही है सरकार की नीतियों के ये सब, लेकिन अंत में तो आपने कहा कि बीजेपी को ही वोट करेंगे।
देखिए अफगानिस्तान में एक परिवर्तन आया, तालिबानों ने हमला किया, लोग भगे, वहाँ के सांसद भगे। तो हम अब चाहते हैं जो भारतीय जनता पार्टी जो है हमारी सीमाओं की रक्षा कर रही है।
All right, joining me tonight on Reality Check, Neerja Chaudhary, senior journalist, is with us. Gilles Vernier, assistant professor, political science, Ashoka University. We have with us Arunabh Saikia, special correspondent, The Scroll, who's been traveling in Uttar Pradesh. And last but not least, our own Saurabh Shukla, NDTV Saurabh Shukla, has also been traveling relentlessly. Thank you all so much for being with us. Neerja Chaudhary, we've all covered elections for years, but is this almost like a new phenomenon we're in, where people on one hand will say we're upset, we're unhappy, but when you finally ask them, they'll say we're voting for the ruling party?
Look, I'm very perplexed personally by the exit poll projections. Let's see what happens tomorrow. But certainly one expected that the BJP will make the government again, but just get through, relying on the voices from the ground that were captured. If despite the deaths in the Ganga, despite the migrants walking back, despite BJP MLAs and ministers not allowed to come into the villages, despite joblessness, stray cattle, prices, people are still expressing their dissatisfaction as opposed to anger and sticking by the BJP in order to give it a 300 plus seats again. That means that what we heard, the enthusiasm, the boisterous articulation for change at Akhilesh Yadav's meeting was cancelled out by a silent, non-Yadav OBC plus Dalit which is stuck by the BJP, and also that at the end of the day, the people regard BJP as the protector of Hindus.
Right, all these factors
that
combined.
Is a very big consideration if the results go the way the projections are being made.
Right. Arunabh, again, you were amongst the first to point out that the BJP was very much in pole position, and as I said at the outset, that's not in doubt. It's the extent of the win or the wave which is somewhat surprising. But your reporting was also picking this up. You would hear grumblings, you would hear discontent, but then, as I say, ghoom fira ke, still going to vote for the BJP.
True. I actually started, reporting on the elections quite early, way back in November.
Yeah.
At that point, it was very apparent who was the number one party in BJP. But as the elections approached closer, those complaints got more vocal, about joblessness, about inflation, those complaints got more frequent and more vocal. So, it's very difficult to comment on the seats, right? Or these exit polls that come up with, because they're essentially mathematical extrapolations. But the sheer fact that, a lot of these exit polls, which have gotten UP correct earlier, say that the BJP is getting almost 45% of total votes. That's actually a marked improvement from the previous time. In fact, my conversation with BJP leaders also, they were confident they'd win, but they said that we can't possibly better, what what we did in 2017, because we can't reach the peak. So yeah, I mean, a 45% vote share is definitely perplexing even to me. I mean, it was very clear that BJP was the number one party, but Samajwadi Party definitely seemed to be in the running and seemed to have covered some ground, in January and February. But clearly, the exit polls, show otherwise.
Saurabh, one of the things that's been interesting, because you've been tracking the elections also, like you traveled phase-wise, and one of the things that it seemed was that actually Akhilesh was picking up momentum as the phases moved eastwards. There was some momentum on the west because of the, the Lokdal alliance, and then by the time you reach the east, the various caste permutations, the newer caste combinations, those huge rallies he was having. But at the same time, did you also come across this paradox that people were upset, they were angry, but then when you ask them, they would say, well, let's give the BJP another chance? Okay, there's a slight audio issue, Saurabh, with you. We'll just come back to you in a second. Gilles, let me bring you in then, just to again try to characterize what appears, at least to me, to be a sort of new shift in Indian politics, where it's no longer the old logic that, there is anti-incumbency, people are upset and you'll get voted out, which is again, like I said, not to say that there hasn't been some good work by the government and all that, but largely you don't see that discontent translating into electoral choices.
Yeah, well, first of all, there's no very clear history of a positive correlation between performance in governance and electoral performance. India has a record of chief ministers who have reasonably performed well and were given the boot, and also has a history of chief ministers who wrecked their state's economy and who were re-elected to power. But by and large, yes, we can make that assumption. Two things. First, the BJP strength comes from the fact that it mobilizes on multiple registers simultaneously, right? These are things that we've discussed. It mobilizes on the basis of religion, nationalism, national security, crime reduction, welfare, leadership appeal, all of that combined, giving multiple reasons for voters to choose, to vote for the BJP. And the second factor is that also all the discontent that we observe on the ground is, of course, very real, and we have to take voters seriously when they talk about, unemployment, lack of prospect, economic distress. But the question is, who do they make responsible? What is the assignation of responsibility? During the COVID second phase, you would hear people blaming the chief minister. Some blame the prime minister. Some blame the bureaucrats or the doctors, or no one in particular, or Providence, Bhagwan hai. And so the political effect of this discontent therefore gets diffused, right, and does not get necessarily concentrated towards anyone in particular. Right. So there is a lot of discontent on unemployment, but what you didn't hear very much were people making the chief minister specifically responsible. Right.
Which is also fair, yeah. Which is also a function of the opposition, right? They also have to try to channel the anger and hold it or point it in a particular direction. Saurabh, I have you back. So just your thoughts on what you were picking up about the kind of voices we were hearing. नाराजगी है, बेरोजगारी है, ये है, वो है, किसको देंगे? भाजपा को ही देंगे.
Absolutely. So there is a very unique point of view I have on this, Vasu. In fact, Nirja and one other colleague is saying that COVID deaths. See, one thing in whole UP, COVID is not an issue in elections at all. In West, religion. In East, caste. So there are two dominant things. Definitely, unemployment is an issue. Stray cattle.
Right. Okay. Sorry, Saurabh. Again, there's a bit of a mic problem. I'm really sorry about this, because we really do want to hear from you. We'll try once again to fix it. Nirja, let me just come back to you. That part of this also has to do with, this disconnect between, performance and electoral choices has also to do with the era of personality cults, right? When you have personalities like Modi and Yogi, then people are not always voting in clearly rational ways. And that also comes into play.
I think, Vasu, what has worked for the BJP in the past? A strong leader, Hindutva come nationalism, come national security, personal security of the PM, all of one piece. Added votes of the non-Yadav OBCs to the BJP kitty, which has been a contribution of Narendra Modi, to the upper caste backing, and social welfareism. So that cocktail remains intact. And while people obviously are dissatisfied, there wasn't akrosh. We kept saying this, is it going to be dissatisfaction or is it actually anger against the government?
Yeah.
Now the interesting thing will be to see if Yogi Adityanath, under his leadership, you get 300 seats or nearabouts. Right. You will have a strong Prime Minister in Delhi and a strong Chief Minister, very strong Chief Minister in the largest state of the country, Uttar Pradesh. How is this going to work out in the run-up to the 2024 elections? It will be very interesting politics pan out.
Of course, there's that aspect as well. Sorry, Saurabh, let's try once again with you. You were saying that COVID, for example, is not an issue. You said it's religion in the West and caste in the East.
Absolutely, Vasu. And one more important point, that people are angry. Definitely there is an issue of price rise, as you have said, issue of unemployment, you have said. But at the end of the day, the issue of nationalism, you in fact in your chat also somebody said that वो अफगानिस्तान में तालिबान आ गया तो इंडिया की सीमाएं भी सेफ रहनी चाहिए. तो we will vote for BJP because India is secure in the hand of Prime Minister Modi and Chief Minister Yogi. Definitely in East UP, unemployment was an issue, and especially the caste division and an issue of caste census and reservation. What Akhilesh Yadav is saying, if he comes to the power, he will do that caste census to woo that non-Jatav Dalit voters which were earlier with BJP. And now after he got the caste combination right, Rajbhar, Swami Prasad Maurya, Dara Singh Chauhan. But how much they are going to vote for Samajwadi Party, it's a big issue. And apart from that also, Akhilesh Yadav is highly riding upon the issue of old pension scheme. That's why yesterday when he held a press conference, he was talking about the ballot papers. He thinks that a lot of people, a lot of these government employees have voted for Samajwadi Party through ballot for old pension scheme. That is why yesterday he was very aggressive, because after exit poll, morale of Samajwadi Party workers were down. But that is why today you see a lot of charged up Samajwadi Party workers on EVM strong rooms. They are saying that we will wait till the time they count the last vote because of the ballot paper votes. And one important thing what I have noticed I've started traveling from Meerut to Balia, and especially Vasu, have gone to Mirzapur, Jaunpur, Tier 1 and Tier 2 cities. In villages, stray cattle is an issue, but the free ration, especially the women voter. And BJP is talking about women voter. An important thing that BJP is highly banking upon. They are saying, the leaders have spoken with today. In fact, I had a word with the state chief of BJP UP, and he was saying that now Mayawati is weak, so Dalit voters are voting for us. But in my reporting and what I have gathered, that Dalits are still intact with Mayawati. So if she was 22% in 2017, how much she will lose in terms of her voting percentage. Okay. So BJP is highly banking upon that. So I think now few hours left, but again people were angry. But if they are voting against BJP or they are not voting against the BJP, that will make the difference.
Yes, that's the whole shift which seems to be taking place. Fascinating, but as you said, just a matter of hours before we know. But thank you all so much for joining us. Thanks for watching. That's all the time we have. Good night.